Hello, world. Welcome to the 199th climate change emergency protest. This is 199. It's September 30th, 2022. Next week will be the 200th, sad to say, climate change emergency protests here in Gettysburg. And I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about. I have some ideas. It's nothing to really be proud of other than persistence, because things have gotten worse and worse and worse with climate change. And at times I feel like I'm not making an impact or any difference. But I guess, it comes down to doing the right thing, and that's all that matters. So I'm in front of Gettysburg College here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It's a nice college. It's a small college. There are 2,600 students from 34 states and 38 countries. The recruiters here have done really well in broadcasting and not broadcasting, and recruiting students from around the world and around the country. And so it's very impressive. The kids, I sometimes drive them for Uber or drop off stuff for DoorDash, and they're very impressive. They have their stuff together, and they're very good speakers and very conversive. They're not into themselves as much as they used to be back in the 1970s, and so they're very interesting people. So this college was founded in 1832, so it's 190 years old. Is founded by an anti-slavery theologian named Samuel Schmucker. And the interesting fact is that when Lincoln gave his Gettysburg address, the students walked from Gettysburg College to the cemetery about a mile away, and to hear Lincoln's speech, the Gettysburg Address. So that was very interesting. And so now the tradition is the first year students still do that every year in the first week of school, and walk up to the cemetery. So it's a tradition that continues after so many years, since 1863. So this is the 199th climate change emergency protest, as I said. Next week will be on October 7th, and that'll be the 200th climate change protest. So I'm going to speak to you the truth. Truth is sometimes uncomfortable and hard to hear for people. And also, I'm sitting here in front of Pennsylvania Hall, that white building there. And during this Battle of Gettysburg, they used it as a field hospital, also as an observatory and signal area for both the Union and the South, whoever was in possession. But anyways, the Union doctors, when they had the college during the Civil War, after the battle was over, they were in the second floor of the building, I think it was, and it's supposedly haunted. But they had so many body parts to cut off, amputations, that they filled up on the grass. They would throw the limbs, the arms and legs out the window, and it filled up the grass all the way to the second floor. So that's how many bodies and people were having trouble and shot and wounded and everything during the battle. Pretty horrific. So anyways, I'm going to tell you the truth and what's going on. And it's very uncomfortable to hear the truth sometimes. And I'll do my best here not to insult everyone, but I think we all need insulted at times. So Hurricane Ian just hit Florida, and it went through the Atlantic to the Caribbean, came off the coast of Africa initially, through the Atlantic to the Caribbean, and then to the Gulf of Mexico. And the water was in the Gulf of Mexico is 5 degrees above normal, which is part of climate change. That's not normal to be 5 degrees above normal for water, especially. If it was water vapor in the air, that would be 2.77 times more than normal as far as water vapor. So there's a huge amount of heat, which would be 19% more water vapor in the air than normal. There's a huge amount of heat, essentially, in the water, and this is what Ian drew off of. Instead of being a Category 1 or Category 2 hurricane, climate change allowed it to be a Category 4 or 5, edge of 5 hurricane with wind speeds up to 155 miles an hour, if not higher at points. So the results of this was tens of billions of dollars in damage, if not trillions. I'm betting it's pushing up towards $1 trillion rather than $500 billion in damage. The extent of damage is amazing and horrific. Just in Fort Myers alone, if you look at photographs and everything and films on YouTube, Fort Myers, Sanibel, Naples, and Orlando, devastation, unbelievable. And now it's out in the Atlantic again. It crossed all the way through Florida. It's out in the Atlantic, and now it's going to hit South Carolina with a Category 1. It reformed, and now it's at least a Category 1. And we'll get rain up here in Pennsylvania probably starting tonight. from it, and it'll continue for 2 or 3 days. And we need it because we're in a severe drought here in Gettysburg, even though it's not on the map. My garden and my wife's garden is cracked, and it's just, the ground is cracked. I mean, it's unbelievable how dry it is. So the rain during the hurricane was up to 7 inches an hour. Do you understand that? 7 inches an hour. It was hard for it to rain any harder. The normal is 2 to 3 inches an hour, but 7 inches an hour is ungodly. There are reports in the tropics of 10 inches an hour, but it's almost impossible for the air to rain that much. Wind speeds, again, were 155 miles an hour, consistent speed. That's a ridiculous amount of kilometers per hour. I don't know what that would be. It's something crazy. 500 miles across was the width of it. 30,000 went to shelters, okay? But hundreds of thousands of people just up and left and found solace and shelter with hotels or friends and family elsewhere in Florida or wherever else in the country they went. So 2.5 million people are still without power in Florida. An interesting sidebar is my stepson was one of the first climate change refugees in our family. He had to leave his college and evacuate to Orlando, which probably was not the best choice in retrospect, but he had to evacuate to Orlando. He's fine now. But he was a temporary climate change refugee, and he's the first one in our family to go through that. And I'm sure, that won't be the last time for any of us. But he is the first. So northwest quadrant of the hurricane was the most powerful part. Usually it's the northeast portion of it, but wind gusts there were up to 170 miles an hour. I mean, this is crazy. As I said, 7 inches an hour is just crazy. So how did this happen? How did we get to this point? Well, like it or not, and this is the truth part, and everyone's to blame in their own ways, but a huge amount of blame goes to the baby boomers. Those are people born between 1946 and 1964. Right now, they're age 76 on down at age 58. They're the ones that were known as the hippies. They're the ones that were at Woodstock. Not all of them. I mean, some of them were too young, including myself. But my oldest brother went to Woodstock. He's since deceased. But hippies went to Woodstock. They're the children of Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. Earth Day was started during that period of time. I mean, they're really hippies. They're really into the earth and really paying attention to what was going on. And then what happened now is some kept their hair, their long hair is the trademark of hippies. Some continued to smoke pot. Some became yuppies, meaning they pursued the dollar. They pursued their jobs. They become economics person. They just engaged in corporate life, things like that, and they lost their way. They lost touch with nature, and you can see it and hear it in conversations and things like that. Especially people that don't understand why I'm doing this every week. I mean, it's unbelievable what has happened to these people, the ex-hippie generation, the boomers. They no longer question authority. They can bitch and moan about it amongst themselves, but they won't get up in the politicians' faces like they used to. Vietnam, as I said many times, the college kids were responsible for ending the Vietnam War because they started protesting. You don't see anyone up in arms about climate change here on campus, and they're all thinking they're going to have a career. They're going to college and studying their books and everything like that in their classes and thinking everything's going to be hunky-dory. There's a certain amount of responsibility that they have. They're old enough now to actually do protest while they go to college and really make it uncomfortable for those in power, supposed power, to continue on the way they are with this horrible path we're on as far as climate change goes. This is a real psychopathic behavior going on by people in charge. So they vote for certain groups of people. The hippies do, the ex-hippies. They either the yuppies are voting for one party and the hippies are voting for the other party. The younger self, though, themselves would be horrified at what they've become. They would look at themselves in the mirror and go, "Oh my God, what happened to you? You lost yourself. You lost your way. You're no longer the person I once knew." They're voted for politicians, and this goes for both parties. And this is the painful part. If you look at the politicians and the party, not the people are still the same. They want good pay. They want union jobs. They want to be respected, things like that. But if you look at women's rights and all that stuff or whatever, But if you look at the politicians that are in charge and the general party that's in charge, and I know I'm insulting you, but stop lashing yourself to your politicians. You're better than that. You're individuals. You've got to get out of this hive mindset. They've lashed themselves to politicians who love war, and they're the politicians. All the politicians now are either centrist or right wing, and this goes for both parties. They're right wingers because they're voting for a military budget that is 50% of our discretionary funds. Do you understand that? 50% of all of the extra money they have goes towards war, and then another 8 to 10% goes towards veterans affairs. So you're looking at 65% of all your money going towards spending towards war-related activities. The younger self of the hippie generation would be horrified at what's going on. They never protest. These people as they've gotten older, never protest, in spite of the evidence to the contrary concerning climate change. They never speak out. They're too afraid of what their friends and family would say. You know, I've been literally ostracized by friends and families, or people won't talk to me about climate change when I'm on the street or at parties and things like that. And they know what I'm all about, and I could talk to them for hours about it, and they don't want to hear it. They just want to go on with their lives and pretend that everything's fine. Things are not fine. Hurricane Ian, the fires in the West, the drought, everything going on here in the United States, the floods in Kentucky, are a result of climate change, and it's very uncomfortable for them to talk about it. And I'm sorry. It is time to grow up and stop being so self-absorbed about yourself and think about not only your life, but also the kids and grandkids and all these college kids here. They're not going to have a life the way we're going. Before they hit age 30, their life will be in pure hell if they live that long. I'm not sure our country or our world will survive that long as far as climate change goes. So they're too afraid of their peers. They're politically dogmatic. You know, they go to the ballot box, and I've seen this happen. They go to the ballot box and they check their party, you know, Republican or Democrat. There's only two choices in this country. There's no dissent allowed. There's no extra parties allowed in this country. The Democratic Party literally got the Green Party thrown off the ballot in the last general election. They filed a court suit and they got them thrown off. My God, what have we become that we can't allow other parties in and allow dissent and allow other types of thinking? Nope, you got to either have Republican or Democrat, and that's it. And I'm not blaming you individual people, but you are part of the problem. The problem is that the general party mechanism is all about corporations and trying to make as much money and lash themselves to corporations in spite of the people that they represent. So if there's only two parties and only two choices, you know, the news was showing about Eastern Ukraine, how Russia has now annexed Eastern Ukraine, and they're getting people to vote in a sham election with troops behind them. They knock on the doors of people in Eastern Ukraine and say, "Who do you want to vote for?" And they have a gun with them. Okay, so there's only one choice: Vladimir Putin. So Putin's going to win with 98% of the vote, and he'll say, "Now it's part of Russia." But it's a sham election because why? There's only one choice, and that was him. Well, essentially, that's what's going on in this country too. I'm insulting you, I realize that. But there's only two choices in this country. You know, the two parties here and two choices. That's it. So my thinking is, why should I vote? This is ridiculous what's going on. You can't, you know, if someone doesn't fit your outlook, why should you vote for them? People say to us all the time, my wife and I, well, then you can't complain if you don't vote, or you're allowing the other party to win. That's absolutely untrue. People that don't vote because of this reason have every right to complain, because there are only two choices. And this election here coming up in Pennsylvania, the two people running for the Senate are a choice of a person who believes in fracking or the other person who believes in fracking for oil and fossil fuels. People running for governor, a person believes in fracking for one party, and the other person believes in fracking and jobs for the other for themselves. So this is, as a climate change person, how could I ever vote for any of these people running for office? Never. I never will. You can point a gun at my head and I won't vote. Not for those people. And the choices are not available for anyone else. Oh, yeah, I could write something in. But they've thwarted all ways of any extra parties becoming viable in this country for the ballot. So, you know, people participating in the sham have no right to complain because they are the ones voting for the stupid politicians, the greedy politicians, the corrupted politicians. You're voting for those people and from those two parties, then you have no right to complain at all. And this is strictly from a climate change point of view. You know, I cannot bring myself to vote for someone that's advocating for more and more cranking out oil and natural gas, which is methane, out of the ground. And I have every right to complain about that because you only give me two choices. So in my lifetime, I've only voted for three different persons for president, and I am totally embarrassed for who I voted for, and I'm ashamed of it. And if I could do it all over again and talk to my younger self, I would have been like, "Oh God, don't, please, please don't." But I was fooled. You know, I'm fooled by the slick talk and everything else. So the biggest thing right now, and the biggest event in human history, is climate change. The hippies and the yuppies are choosing not to get involved in it. This Deficit Reduction Act. Oh, Jim, they passed the Deficit Reduction Act, which had climate change in it. Well, you know what? It's tied in with national parks and public parks, in that you cannot have any solar panels or wind power on public land without first allowing drilling on those properties as well. So this is the double thing that these parties do. These heads of these parties do. They act like they're doing one thing, meanwhile they're doing heinous things behind your back that nobody knows about. So there's no desire to protest by the yuppies or hippies or anyone else now. There's nothing going on. People want to keep their lifestyle. They don't want to change. This won't happen. Climate change isn't going to happen to me. Well, now it's hit all of Florida. It's hit all the western United States. It's hit the southern United States. You have severe drought. All 50 states in the United States right now have one form of drought or another in different parts. Some states are totally in drought. Some have small slivers of drought. But for the first time in my life, I've never seen where all 50 states have some level of drought going on. So yeah, they always think, people think in this country and around the world, think, oh, I'll vote for this guy or this woman and they'll change things. Yeah, they'll change things. It's getting worse and worse and worse. Things are changing real fast, and they're going not at an exponential rate, but they're going at an increasing rate, at an increasing speed of change. And if you connect the dots, you'll see where we're headed. And I hate to say it to you people, but we're headed towards extinction. And the death that comes won't be pleasant. If you watch and witness the people in Florida, what happened to them, that's an example. Or you witness the people, the climate change refugees in the western United States. They're burning up. They're losing their houses. They're losing their lives. They're losing their families. Texas, same thing happened there. So the cost of Ian, his hurricane that just passed, has been in lives lost, post-traumatic stress disorder, $500 billion or more in damage. Insurance companies are no longer going to insure these places. Sanibel Island, for example, in Florida, was almost totally wiped out. They're cut off from the mainland due to the bridge being destroyed, the land and sea bridge. So insurance companies aren't going to cover these things anymore. They can't afford to. They'll go bankrupt if they insure these companies. So people on Sanibel Island most likely will never have insurance again for their houses again. So, right now you're going to, climate change happening here and around the world are fires, floods, drought, heat, hurricanes, temporary refugees, permanent refugees, displacement of these people, food such as famine issues, and sea level rise, amongst other things. These are going to be looked back as being the good old days right now. This is as good as it's going to get. It's going to get progressively worse and worse and worse. And this is the reality of the situation. There's no indication that we're going any other direction just except into a hellscape. And we're causing this ourselves. If everyone get out of their political dogma, quit lashing yourself to your politician, and realize what they're doing, and start forming a better party, or within your own party, don't take it anymore. Tell them you're no longer voting for them, and you're just going to sit by and not do this election. But that'll never happen because they're so worried about winning and winning and winning, and not realizing that they're causing the seeds of their own destruction. So what happens in the end? Nature bats last. Guy McPherson coined that phrase, and nature bats last. And that's what it comes down to. Nature will bat last, and nature and Mother Earth will determine whether we get shaken off, as George Carlin said. We'll get shaken off the planet like a dog shakes off fleas. I'll see you later. Next week will be Climate Change Talk number 200.